Hello, you guys. Welcome to this week's episode of the Expand and Evolve podcast. I'm your host, Carly Pinchin, and I have a guest this week, which I am so excited, Angelica Ray. We connected over email, Instagram, and so this is actually my first time meeting her, and I'm so excited because I just know anyone who does this work, I just feel it's so valuable, and it's been so special and valuable to me on my journey. Any intuitive work whatsoever, and just healers and people who are like doing this work to help the collective, I feel like is so unbelievably powerful. And even before we jump into that, I don't know if you want to say just say a little bit of who you are and what you do. And then I want to jump into how you got into this work because I feel like most people don't start here. It's a journey, and then you discover these things about yourself, and then it's like, oh my gosh, I need to do this to help other people, and you kind of get pulled into that place. But for you, maybe just share a little bit like, who are you, what do you do, and then we can jump into how you got involved in doing what you do now.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for that introduction, and I'm so excited to connect. I think someone sent me one of your episodes, and I was like, oh my gosh, I just really loved your vibe, which is something we'll talk about today. Just like feeling that resonance deeply with someone. But yeah, my name is Angelica. I am an intuitive healer, a coach. But to be honest, like so many of us, all of these labels just feel less and less fitting by the day. Like even saying that kind of gives me like ick sometimes because I'm like, it's not really that. It's not really that. And I think part of the work that like spirit is really moving through me right now is who am I if I don't identify with these titles? Like, how do I show up? How do I let my energy, my heart, my creation, the way I treat people speak more about who I am and what I do than the titles do? So, all that to say, as I work with people now, I support them really in their healing and awakening journey. And it's usually a process. Usually people find their way to me when they're in some sort of like crisis point or they're going through some sort of awakening and they're like, "Oh my goodness, I I don't know what's going on. I don't know who I am anymore." And usually spirit will send them to me. And that first session is usually like a mirror. And I'll reveal to people, this is a reminder of who you are. This is why you're here. And those messages usually resonate so deeply in that glimpse of their soul and who they are is so profound that they begin to walk the path towards deeper healing and awakening to be in alignment with that. So
it's so powerful. Like everyone lately too, everyone's like, ugh, I don't want the label. Like that's not who I am. I'm just like me. And these are things that I do. Everyone I've spoken to lately is the same thing. They're like, I don't even want to say that. And I feel like because when you start to move out of your ego, you're like, I don't identify as all these labels. Like it doesn't resonate. And so I love that. I feel like the last couple people I've interviewed, they've all said the same thing. And I'm like, I need to find a different way because I'm like, I know this isn't who you are, but like, how can you explain what you do? You know, it's like a weird thing to navigate.
And it's such even that is like so reflective of where we are collectively. Like we're not where we've been, but we're not fully in our new way of being or relating or like doing. So even this like push pull between that doesn't work, but we don't quite know what works is so reflective and so emblematic of what we're all feeling in the journey that we're on right now. But one of my favorite things about doing this work is, I mean, we'll talk about like I've been intuitive my whole life, but I've been formally working with clients in one-on-one sessions going on 6 years now. And my favorite thing about that is being able to see collective patterns and insights and creating for teaching to and speaking on like those collective things because it helps us feel so much less alone in these moments when we're all kind of going through similar things, but maybe in silos. Uh-oh, I think it's freezing.
I know the connection. It'll record okay though, no matter what on your end. I agree with the collective patterns. I've been talking to friends about this recently. Like just it makes you feel connected and understand like what the F is going on. Because, and I don't know if you want to speak to this even right now. Like I've noticed I was just on the phone with my friend this morning, and I had said, I'm like, you're getting pushed to let go everything that's not serving you because things are happening way faster. And it's like as you kind of, like you said, like as you awaken and you go on this journey, it's just like you need to keep, I always say, like your vessel like clean. And so things will happen and it's like, no, not serving you. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. And I don't know if you want to speak on that, but I feel like timelines are just moving so much quicker than they were 20, 30, 40 years ago. And so for us, where we are right now as a collective, I feel like things are just speeding up and picking up. And for those of us who are kind of in this space, you're feeling it and you're feeling it heavy. So I don't know, even like right now with these last 2 weeks and even this eclipse coming and everything that's going on, if you even want to speak to that specifically of like what you're feeling and noticing. Yeah, just what you're noticing right now with clients and the collective and like what you're feeling, because
Yeah.
I can feel it and I know everyone around me can feel it. And I feel like it's this like big purge of like letting go what no longer serves. And so it's been rough, like so many tears, so much letting go. Memories are popping up for me, like shit that I'm like, oh my gosh, like where is this coming from? And it can make you feel a little crazy until you know that you're not alone.
Yes. And it can, I mean, especially as women who are already like, we're emotionally very dynamic and we're meant to ebb and flow. This feels even more maybe destabilizing because it's like one day I feel so empowered, so on top of the world. Like I feel good, I feel embodied. And then the next day it's like, do I want to get out of bed today? I don't really know. And I think that can really send us for a loop if we're not used to or know how to navigate it. But I guess what I'll say, what I've noticed and what I'm really feeling is that number one, those of us who are here right now chose to be here right now, and we have signed up for this shift, to be a part of this shift. And it's also why over the past few years, we've seen a lot of death and a lot of loss. And a lot of people, I was explaining it to someone like, all right, this is my train stop. I'm getting off. I didn't sign up to go kind of the rest of this way on this ride, or I signed up to go only this far. And I believe that is because those of us that are here right now have a role to play and have signed up to play it for longer. The other thing that I think is really interesting, and it's kind of where the entry point, for our conversation is, and something that I'm very passionate about, is the fact that where our world is going, it is going to become increasingly difficult to discern truth and reality from fake. And it's going to be more difficult to discern that with our eyes, with our ears, with our physical senses. And so what we're being attuned to right now feels like learning to navigate the world with a like beyond physical acuity, right? We're learning to navigate the world differently. But in order to be able to feel if something is in coherence with you and something is resonant with you, you have to know your own baseline. And so that speaks to the point that you were making about things being cleared and things being removed, so that every individual can feel the essence of themselves, to be able to distinguish me or not me, truth or not truth, move towards, move away from, in this world that we're moving through, which is, it's going to be less black and white to be able to do that.
Right. No, it's so true. Because I feel like, I mean, we've seen it over the last few years of what we used to see as truth, and it's being spoken to us, but it's like, no, you need to be able to be in your body and feel. It's not about hearing or seeing, it's about feeling. And
Yeah.
it's like, for so many of us, we've been so disconnected from our bodies. And I know I was, it's like, that's how I was living. And so until you come back to that place where you can be within your body, you can't actually feel truth. Like you don't have the same level of discernment, where once you're back in your body, it doesn't matter what someone's saying or what you're hearing, you feel the resonance of truth within your body. And it's either you're like, yes or no. And you can just feel it. It's
Yes.
not about what's being said. And I feel like that is what I feel like so many people are being pulled to do. We've lived so much of like, looking outward for answers. And now it's like, no, 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 it's time to come back in here. And all this place that you haven't wanted to be, like, we're going back in now.
Mhm.
And so then that's like, you're feeling all the shit because you need to clear it to be able to be connected to your heart and your body in a way that's going to serve you. Yeah, it's been, yeah.
I could not agree more, right? And I think the other really interesting thing about that is the ways in which it's throwing a lot of the like spiritual community for a loop, because so much of the spiritual world has been like, who can ascend the highest and who can have like the most access. But a lot of that work is very escapist in its own way. And that's how you kind of get into these positions where we have these like so-called gurus or like, masters of things, but they have an ego the size of, Texas.
Yeah.
And because they haven't done the healing work to actually bring it through in an embodied way. And we came here to be both human and
Yes.
soul simultaneously. So
Right.
it definitely feels like a recalibration of sorts.
Yeah. Well, and to remember, like, we came here for this human experience. And I don't know if you want to speak on that at all, because we haven't really talked about that on this podcast at all. Of just like the human experience and like being a soul within this body and choosing to be within this body, which means, yeah, you signed up to feel,
Mhm.
meaning it's not always love. It's going to be pain. There's going to be hurt. There's going to be struggle. And it's not like your life has to be a struggle, but there's going to be things that challenge you. And it's getting back in your body and being open and willing to feel all the things. And I know for me, I like was really good at just like disassociating, and like I would literally be able to leave my body in a second. And so any uncomfortable feelings I wouldn't have to feel. I would just go zoom, I'm not feeling. But what happens? Like you can't feel the full spectrum of love and joy and happiness either if you're blocking out the other emotions. And so understanding, like, I'm coming from a place now too where I'm like, no, you need to be grounded and know that you're safe. All the feelings that come up, it's safe to be in your body and feel them. Let them move through you, let them pass through you. They're meant to be fluid and flowing and moving. And I feel like a lot of people still are kind of running away
Mhm.
from that. And I feel like that is sometimes where they're like, oh, I'm going to be the best and I can like channel this and channel that. And it's like, you're still way up here. You're not in this body
Mhm.
feeling what you're meant to be here to feel. And so, yes, great. If you can be a medium and do all these things and channel all this stuff, amazing. And can you be here? Because if you can't, you're not actually living this like grounded human experience. And I don't know, I feel like you can't make the same impact because like humans need humans. They don't, if you needed to just be a soul, you'd still just be a soul.
I could not agree more. That's like so perfectly put.
Like, what are
Yeah.
you doing here? If you were
And
supposed to be a
that's
soul,
how
like go float in the
I
stars again.
right. Like we would just go. We wouldn't have
Yeah.
ever come. We wouldn't have ever signed up for this in the first place.
Yeah.
It's so true. And interestingly enough, so I like I kind of mentioned, I'm a naturally very gifted intuitive. It's
Yeah.
just part of how I came here and of course learned to develop it. But a few years ago, I would say maybe about a year to 2 years ago, I started like really feeling the rub of people coming to me. I can do incredible like predictions. I have like screenshots mile long in my phone of people saying like, "Oh my gosh, this panned exactly as you said it would," or
Mm-hmm.
you were like so spot on with that. And I love that stuff and it's cool and I'm so grateful to be able to
Yeah.
act as a channel in that way. But what I was feeling, number one, is the codependency that's in that doesn't actually serve the soul. So we have all these like, healers or people out here seeking intuitive advice, but honestly, none of it means anything if it doesn't actually provide you with a better life and experience in this moment. And for that, that's really where we need the healing side of the work. Can you clear the traumas? Can you clear the karmas? Are you learning your lessons? Are you in your body? What does your relationship look like to others, to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
to source, to God? So it's interesting what you say just about how many of the best, you know, healers, mediums, channels, etc., have really left behind that human healing piece. They're great at the awakening side of the work, but not so attuned to the healing human side of the work.
Mm-hmm. Yes, which we need both. And I was even just thinking that as you're speaking, I'm like, for so many people that are listening, if they're fresh to all of this, like it can be like, what are these woo woo? What is this woo woo? What are they talking about? And I even have people in my life still where like we'll talk about things. They're like, you guys are getting way too woo woo. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forget
Mm.
once you're here what it was like at the beginning when this is all so foreign. So for you, like what got you, how did you get here? Like obviously I know when you're intuitive, you've been intuitive, right? But what brought you into this work, or like what happened in your journey that brought you here? Because I feel like usually there's some level of pain disconnect things that lead to you remembering.
Yeah, I would say so. So I grew up naturally very sensitive, like incredibly sensitive, like the kid that would cry on like the
Yep.
drop of a dime, just incredibly attuned to not only my own emotion, but what I now realize is the emotion of like pretty much everybody and everything around me. And so I learned to develop this intuition, this natural intuition, as almost a survival mechanism.
Mm.
If I can, if I can predict, if I can read, if I can feel what other people around me are feeling, then I can perform in a way that keeps me safe.
Yeah.
Whether that's with caretakers or, friends or in social
Mhm.
situations. And so that was kind of where the the gift came online. And one of the things that I've always known about myself is that I'm a teacher. So I worked at a large corporate bank, and instead of hitting my sales goals and opening new accounts, I would have clients at my desk for like hours at a time, basically teaching financial literacy, talking about life in the human journey. And my manager would be like, what are you doing? You're supposed to be like selling financial products and services, but here
Yeah.
I am interacting with people. And that led me to, no, you're meant to like teach. This is the part of the work that you love. So I joined Teach for America. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a program that ultimately fast tracks you into the teaching profession.
Mm.
And it places new teachers into high need regions and environments and school systems. So I moved from San Diego, where I'm from, to Atlanta, Georgia to teach in a high school. And I was in that high school. I actually ended up working on the operation side rather than in the classroom for 6 years. But I was in a similar position where I was, I would have students and families come into my office. All of this intuitive stuff would come through. We would have this like whole healing experience that I didn't really realize was happening, and then they would walk out differently. And there was still a major disconnect for me between the work that I was actually doing and like what my job title reflected.
Right.
And so I was applying for a whole bunch of jobs. I would get to like to get kind of out of that sphere. I was like, I need to get out of this environment. And I every single door got slammed in my face, Carly. Like it was the craziest thing. I would get to like the last round of the interview, and all of a sudden they're not hiring for this position anymore. And it really felt like God was like, nope, like that's not it. And that was the catalyst to this journey. At this point, I was having like full blown anxiety attacks in my office. Like I was miserable because I just wanted to do this thing that my soul was called to
Mm-hmm.
do. I had some wild experiences where I received a lot of intuitive information for people, to the point where they ended up telling me, like, if you don't do something with this, you are wasting a gift and a talent. I predicted
Mm-hmm.
one of my friend's twins. She was like, super pregnant to like the week that we had a conversation, just like all kinds of wild things.
Yeah.
And I transitioned into this space full time.
Yeah.
So that was the first part. And that seems like the interesting part of the journey. But for me, I don't really think that that was the interesting part.
Okay, I want to stop you for one sec about,
Yeah.
because when people typically they get doors slammed in their face, like, oh my God, why is this happening to me? Like, and it's like, no, I've had this happen with people in my life where I'm like, you're being blocked for a reason. Like it's trying to guide you somewhere else. Like it's never happening. It's so corny, but it isn't happening to you. It's happening for you every single time. And I feel like back then, were you able to see like, okay, I'm definitely not supposed to be doing this? Or were you kind of like, what is going on? Why can't I get a job?
Both at the
Yeah.
same time. There was definitely the ego part of me that was like, what the heck is going on?
Mhm.
I've never had a problem getting a job. I know I'm just as like qualified. So
Mhm.
I had that whole dance going on.
Yep.
And then there was the part of me that was like, knew that something else was happening. And I don't know if you or any of our friends here that are listening with us have had the experience of feeling like, oh my gosh, I just completely blanked on what I was going to say. I guess I'm not supposed to say it. I was like, there's like a whole thing that just completely left me. So, okay, I won't say that then. What was I going to say? I don't remember.
Just
But yeah, go
the
ahead.
shift for you to see like the ego side of like, but I'm fully qualified. And then the other side to be like, okay, then there has to be something better, but it can be so hard when you're in that to trust it.
Yes,
Like,
that's the point. So I don't know if you've ever had this experience. Basically, everything that I've said I'm not going to do in my life, God
mm,
like has laughed at me and been like, "Ha, I have something for you." So I'm
yeah.
never going to do this. I'm never going to do that. And one of my things was I'm never going to be an entrepreneur. I'm never going to work for myself. So to see the leap from like all of these corporate steady jobs that I was applying for being slammed in my face, well, that meant I was going to have to create something for myself and walk the entrepreneurial route, which is a route I said I would never do. So that made it even harder for me to say yes and see it.
Mm,
Uh, and I think that's like a
mhm,
common thing is like when these doors are slamming, it's because the one path that's open for you is the one you said you were not like, it's the one that you're most scared to walk or the one that you have the most resistance to
mm.
walking that's open.
So true. And you're because you're just like, but I always said I wouldn't do this. And now you're being faced with having to do it. I feel like that's common for a lot of people who have jobs and then they're like, they know what the thing that they're like, your soul was pulling you to do was going to take you having to be an entrepreneur, but it's so scary and it's so unknown. And then it's somehow having the faith that like it's going to work out and you can trust it.
And that's like the hardest part of the journey. And I feel like that's
Yeah.
where so many of us are right now in our
Hmm.
journey. It's like it feels very familiar to that time in my life where we are being asked to have a tremendous amount of faith in the unseen, a tremendous amount of faith in the unknown. And there's so many things that have to be online in order to be able to do that. Honestly, there's so many parts of ourselves that have to be fully online. The body and the nervous system has to be calibrated to be able to manage that level of uncertainty. So our faith has to be attuned to something bigger
Mhm.
and more intentional than, yeah, it's just,
It's so true because I've noticed in the last few weeks, I'm like, okay, your nervous system is out of whack.
mm,
Like, bring yourself back. You know how to do this. You need to regulate yourself right now. And like, I'll stop everything I'm doing, lay down, breathe until my nervous system is back to like regular place. I'll drop and start doing yoga. I'm noticing how much I'm like, I never used to do this. I would just continue like, oh, that's like, I'm just going to do something else and do something else. And I would keep myself distracted rather than dealing with the fact that my nervous system was like spiraling. And
yes.
so I've noticed that too, where it's like, no, in order for you to be in this place where you can have the faith and like step out of being in fear, you need the tools to regulate your own nervous system in those moments where it is like you can feel it's getting a little uppity, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling all these things. You need to be able to bring yourself back and regulate your nervous system. Like I've noticed that's huge in the last couple months for me personally. Um, and I don't know if you're noticing like that's when like breath work and all these things are so powerful because until you learn to regulate your own nervous system, like your life's still going to be a mess because it's like you're still like reaching. I feel like all the time for these things outside of you to try to like bring yourself back where it's like no, you need to learn that skill within you. And that's where obviously you can hire people to help you until you get there. I wasn't here. I had to hire body workers, intuitives. I had to go to Reiki. I had to go to breathwork sessions. I had to go to retreats. Like I had to go do plant medicine. Like I've done so much to get to this point where now I'm like, you've got this. you're safe, you can breathe, you can do this yourself. But that's been like 3 years of intense work hiring other people to help me get to this place where I can do that on my own. And it's
Yes.
like, that's for people who I talk to people and they're like, but, and I'm like, you're not maybe ready to do this alone. And this is where you need to be willing to invest in yourself through going to the retreat, going and doing plant medicine, going and hiring an intuitive, going and hiring a body worker, someone who can help you with somatic release. Like all of these things are so crucial until you get to the place where you have the tools and now you're like, oh, I can do this for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree wholeheartedly. I also am a huge believer in, that's the beautiful thing about our hyper connected world right now is before I
Mhm.
could truly invest in the level of mentorship and coaching and support, I mean, my book stack, my library is like, a mile thick. Or,
Yeah.
I would do the $20 workshop that I could
Yep.
do. Like there are ways to find access, even if you're not at the point where you can
Yes.
invest in, a $5,000 package or even a $300 session. And
Yep.
I think the other side of that coin is as practitioners and as people who have been gifted by God or whatever other, power there is
Mhm.
to be able to have those resources and have that resource online. It is our moral and spiritual obligation to, if we really are who we say we are and we're really in this for what we say we're in this for, it is our obligation to create so that it is accessible at every level.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean you have to give everything away for
Yeah.
free, obviously, but it does mean we need to think about access and providing that access for people
Mhm.
at different points in their journey.
Mhm. No, 1,000%. Because when I started, I was like just fresh. I mean, yeah, I don't know, out of college, and so I didn't have money, and I read like The Universe Has Your Back was one of my first books. Like some of Gabby Bernstein's courses that were small and cheap. Like I did things that I could afford, but if you're like, "Oh, I just can't afford that." Like no, there's so much you can do. There's free YouTubes, there's so much out there for free that you can dive into if you're not in a place where you're ready to pay and like put yourself in a position to afford all the other things that you could be doing. Where I'm like, for me, I don't know how you feel about this too, where I'm like, you have to just be willing to start though, because I always see, I'm like, money is just energy. It's a currency that's flowing. And if you're never prioritizing putting money into yourself, like just good luck. I don't know. I'm like, you're going to keep getting the shit that you're getting because it's like, you need to show that the thing that you value most is you. And
Yes.
if your money's constantly on all these other things, and I get it because life is crazy and you have to be able to afford where you're living and bills and all that. But it's like when you start to invest in you, I made the very big decision to reinvest back in myself. And it was a scary decision where I was like, okay, this is a really big expense. And it was like the biggest expense I'd ever put into myself. But I was like, if you choose to go with the cheaper option, you're staying in scarcity, fear, and lack. And I want to be done with it. And so in this moment, I'm choosing that if I do this and I prioritize me above everything else, I'm going to have so much more abundance flow to me. And I did. And you can do those with little things like
Yeah.
the $10, course, the $10 book, the $30 thing. Like it doesn't have to be this massive expense. It's just in those little moments choosing it to choose you. And I feel like it will always come back to you tenfold because of the growth that you're going to go through when you invest in these things for yourself.
Yes. And this is one of the things when I listened to the first episode that I heard,
Yeah.
you were speaking on values and how
Mm-hmm.
important it is to money is a resource, right? That is
Mm-hmm.
reflective and likes to move in alignment with your values. And the more
Yes.
that you use that resource to support what you value, the more of it,
Mm-hmm.
shows up, the more your life is aligned to the things that
Yes.
you say that you care about. And so I
Mm-hmm.
agree wholeheartedly with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have been in positions where I have found ways to pay for things that it might have looked crazy. Like maybe I
Yeah.
decided to say no to something that on paper made a lot of sense for this other thing that didn't make a lot of sense. And
Yeah.
those experiences have been the most transformational um, for me. I'm a huge believer, obviously, in getting support,
Mhm.
especially in the beginning of your journey,
Yes.
or times when you are not able to self-regulate,
Yes.
because it's not always possible to bring yourself
Mm-mm.
back. We're here together for a reason.
Mhm. Well, at the beginning of my separation, when all of this stuff was showing up, I feel like that was like I jumped into spirituality like maybe 10 years ago, and then I got re-brought back to it all maybe 3 or 4 years ago now. And in the beginning, where I was like, oh my God, my whole life is turmoil. What the hell? I've been disconnected for 10 years. Who am I? What am I doing? I don't know if I want to be married. Like everything felt like a mess. I was not in a position to move through that alone. I
Mhm.
had to. I was like, anybody I can find, please help me. I was going to sessions all of the time because I was like, I need support. I'm not okay and I can't regulate myself right now. And even the word regulate, it's just like if things feel chaotic and you can't get out of your own mind, that's when you need to find support because you don't need to go through it alone. Find people who can help bring you to that place. And I would go like there was weeks where I was going to a body worker like once a week, like people
Mm.
who do somatic release and intuitive work and Reiki, like most people do that once every couple of months. I was like, no, I need to see you every single week. Please help me. Please help me because I could feel it. Like I was having memories of like past life stuff show up. Like all this stuff was happening that I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I feel like I couldn't do it alone. And that's where it's beautiful to have people like you and what you're doing. And that's where you need to seek out that support.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's a thing, like that part is really important in my sessions with people. I am like, it's one of the highest compliments I get from clients all the
Yeah.
time is that I am the best resource recommender like ever. Like I have a book for
Mhm.
every conversation topic. I have like, there's
Yeah.
always something that I can offer beyond just the
Mhm.
recording or just the time together, because I believe that it is really a journey of breadcrumbs, right? And so you
Mhm.
might come to one session, you might pick up a book, and that book might spark something in you, and then you overhear a conversation, and that's kind of how the breadcrumbs lead to one another.
Mhm.
But especially right now, I just really believe that we all do need support. And one of the things when I was looking ahead, around this time last year, maybe I
Mhm.
started to feel some major collective themes coming through. I wrote about them, and I'll probably continue to share about them in a little bit more depth. But one of the themes that was coming through
Mhm.
was how we're moving away from a system of hierarchy and
Mhm.
into ecosystems that are more web like rather than
Mhm.
hierarchical. And this relates in the sense that we do need each other, but not
Mhm.
from the place of, oh, this person is on a pedestal, or this person needs more, or this person, has the answers. I find myself learning from my former students right now. So, maybe in a session, something came up. I did have a session with someone where I was like, oh, you need to, tapping would be really supportive for you. And she did her certification in tapping and is now like using that in her own practice. And I
Mhm.
look to her for teachings around EFT and tapping,
Mm.
right? So
Right.
it's really this beautiful ecosystem. And if everyone is bringing whatever their
Mhm.
gifts, talents, and resources are, we can both teach to and learn from one another in a really beautiful way.
Yeah. So true. Okay, yeah, talk about that. Like you're some of the collective themes that you're seeing, whether it's right now or what you're seeing in like the next year, or whatever timeline you want to speak on. But even when you tap in, like what are you feeling right now for people?
Yeah. So the biggest things I'm seeing right now are massive changes in identity. It doesn't even feel like changes yet. It feels
Mhm.
like existential questioning around identity.
Mhm.
And my sense with that is that we are really being unfused from ego identification. And I know that sounds very woo
Mhm.
woo and sounds like very, okay, girl, like whatever. But we're
Mhm.
seeing it play out in a major way. If we look at like what's happening in the news with celebrities, what's happening in the news with some of these like figures that we have put on a pedestal in the health and wellness and spiritual
Yep.
space, everything that is built from the energy of ego is being revealed as such. And
Mm.
It's a really terrifying thing to experience because it has massive impacts for our businesses, for the ways that we make and circulate money, for our relationships with, romantic partners, with friends, with family members, with business partners, with ourselves, like our relationship to work and kind of how we started this conversation. So that's a huge theme that I'm seeing is what in our life has been built from ego and the
Mhm.
ways in which that is currently being dismantled is huge.
That
In
makes so
this
much
moment.
sense. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I have some clients who are just like incredible, like some of the biggest, coolest, incredible names in the industry who I'm talking to right now, and they're like, I don't have the energy for this like big crazy business that I've built, or I don't want to sell high ticket masterminds anymore, or
Mhm.
and I think it's a really powerful recalibration out of
Mhm.
labels and titles and back into heart service.
Yes. That's what I was gonna say. Like, because I've actually been asked that sometimes. People are like, "What? How did you do what you do, and how are you building?" And I'm like, in the beginning, yeah, it was ego, but I've been leading from my heart for such a long time that I think when you're working from a heart centered and service minded place, truly because you're trying to help humans, you're not going to feel this hit the same way that if you're still very much building a business out of ego, where it's going to have to rock you and bring you to your heart. And I'm like, as you said that, I was like, maybe that's why I haven't been rocked so hard this last little bit as I've watched so many other people be rocked, because I'm like, I started making this shift. So it's like for the people who are feeling that in their business, just to know when you get to your heart place, just trust that the money and the business growth is going to come back. Because
Yes.
I know when I went through this, I feel like 2 or 3 years ago, my business was dropping and dropping and dropping. And I had to shift back to my heart. And then once I did that, my business has grown again. But in the beginning, I fully built it out of ego. Like, yeah, I wanted, but it was like, I can get money and I can have a car and I can have this and that. And it was like I was chasing these external things. I cared about it for my family. Yes, of course, it wasn't just like I want cars. But then once I went, no, this is about people. And my entire focus went to how am I helping? How am I serving? Then my business started to explode again. So just to trust that if you're in that really scary place, like my bank account was getting to zero, like I was losing money. It was not fun. It was very stressful, but I feel like I had to be brought to that place to return to my heart. And now business has been so much easier. It's so different. I'm not building it how I used to. I'm not as stressed out as I used to be. Like it really does start to flow easier. So just trust the dismantling, because it's like it's going to lead you to such a better, more beautiful place.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so perfectly said. And don't be afraid to be led to a different
Yes.
place, which is the thing that was the message that came through really strong for me last week, actually, was that we are becoming the people, the humans, the embodiment of who we need to be, but in that we're not always in the right place. And so I see this almost as like a massive chessboard that we don't have all of the pieces for, and God's source spirit is moving us to where we need to be so that we can create, evolve, shepherd in what we're meaning to shepherd in. So if you feel
Mhm.
yourself being dramatically moved, but also, because I mean, I'm kind of in this season for myself where it's like I'm more me, I'm more heart centered than I've
Mhm.
ever been, but there's so much about the 3D reality of my life that
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily reflect, and that's what keeps coming through. It's like we're just moving you to where you need to
Yeah.
be because you're becoming who you need to be. Okay, so you
Mhm.
gave me permission to give you like a mini readings as they came through, which is this is something that was coming through for you specifically right now. That number one, like my sense is that you have very it's youthful energy, but it's innovator energy. So you are like basically a blank slate, and people love to come to you because you're so open to experimenting, trying, growing. Like you would be an incredible like preschool teacher or something like that because it's like all just play for you. It's all fun. and you have this very experiential, warm, youthful energy. So my sense is like if you're building a business, the people that are coming to you love to be with you and love to be in your energy because you are so open and willing and like nurturing in a way that is really,
Mhm.
really fun. You're like all of the ways that we've seen so far, I'm unattached to any of them and truly just interested in creating and building and exploring my way into what works well right now. And that
Mhm.
they're saying like that's why you've been so successful in this. And the more
Mhm.
open you continue to stay to, it's almost like it's like people probably call you like naive or something like that is kind of
I
what it's
call
looking like.
myself naive. Yeah.
Yeah. They're saying like, she's not naive. Like it might appear that way, like, oh, she's so,
Yeah.
but it's not. It's a genuine gift of like pureness and openness
Mhm.
that is so special and so unique. That looks like naivete to the untrained eye, but is not in
Yeah.
fact.
Thank you. That's true.
Yeah.
And you know what's crazy? I mean, you can share anything you want with me, but because I've had this pull, like I'm supposed to start a school for kids, but
Mhm.
I'm in this in between right now of I almost bought a house and then I was like, nope, this doesn't feel right. I feel like I'm rushing it. I feel like I have this partner who's going, I don't know. I'm just like, I don't think I want to do this alone anymore. And I'm like, I don't need to take these like quick action steps. It's all going to fall into place. But I'm in this place of like, but I need to start the school for the kids. And I'm like, but do I need to stay here? But I don't feel pulled to stay here. Like I know I'm supposed to live somewhere else. I just don't know where it is yet. And so I'm kind of in this, like you said, I'm just being fully open. And I'm like, I'm going to know when I'm going to know. And until then, just be patient. I don't know. Like I'm not stressing about it. Where I think before I'd be like, but I need to do this, I need to do this, and I'd be like panicking to get these things done. And right now I'm like, if it's not just flowing to me, it's not the right time. You don't need to stress about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit longer term. Like it's probably like a three
Yeah.
to 5 year thing. What I'm hearing is there's three of you that are doing it together. Two of you, you already know one of the person. There's one more person that's coming in to support. So we're waiting. It's interesting also because the land is so important to what you're building. Like it has to
Mhm.
be on very particular land. It has to be,
Mhm.
it's very like outdoor based. It's almost, it
Yeah.
feels a little bit like Montessori, but
Yeah.
even maybe someone might call it like crunchier than Montessori, even
Mhm.
like it's super unstructured, but perfectly
Mhm.
divinely structured in its lack of structure. And the world's like not quite there yet. We need a little bit more dismantling. And then there's like a couple more pieces that are being, um, yeah, being assembled. You're definitely like gonna be in a place that like when I look in my mind's eye, I see it
Mhm.
like an open space in Colorado or
Mhm.
like an open space in Montana or like kind of in that vibe of just beautiful
Mhm.
scenery, lots of open spaces. Also, I'm hearing that the families who are meant
Mhm.
to receive from you have not yet been relocated to the place that you're going to. So they have to go first. The need
Mhm.
arises, and then you'll feel called to where they are asking for you.
Mm. Mhm. Because where I am, I'm like, I'm not supposed to be here. It's so funny. Someone else has said Montana before.
Yeah, that's what it
And I'm
looks
like,
like.
huh? I'm like, but I feel like, I'm like, I keep seeing like Texas and Tennessee, but I'm also like, I don't know. There's a tree. I can see this tree. And when I look up and I see that tree, I'm going to be like, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Mm,
That's all I
perfect.
see right now is these specific leaves. It's
Yes.
so wild. And I'm like, until I see the leaves, I don't know.
I'll just be out here looking for my place. It's definitely going to call you. And when I said, Colorado or Montana or whatever, like
Yeah.
it's just kind of that vibe. You could find something very
Yes.
similar in a Tennessee. Texas feels too dry, and
Yeah.
doesn't have the right climate in the way that like a Southeast
Mm-hmm.
Tennessee would, or even like a more northern thing. There's something about the seasonality that's really
Mm-hmm.
important for what you're building too. So it's fun.
Mm-hmm. I feel that.
Yeah,
I love it.
I love it too. Can't wait to see what
It's so
happens.
fun.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. Is there anything else you're feeling that you want to say on that?
Let's
Or just
see.
in regards to anything that's come through for me, if you want to share.
Yeah.
Hmm.
um, I'm laughing because your guides are doing a number on you in relationships right now. So, like, if you're kind of, especially with like romantic relationships, they're teaching you a very specific course of study about you for you. What I'm sensing is that you're able to see yourself right now in almost like in third person in relationships, which is
Mm-hmm.
like very supportive for your curriculum. So like if you're dating, you
Mm-hmm.
can totally do that, but I don't necessarily expect you to like meet the one or like a major significant relationship because they say like I almost see you if you like go to a restaurant or something. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you on a date, but then like you are actually watching yourself on a date, like
Mm-hmm.
learning a lot about your behaviors and like what it is that you actually want. And I think I show up this way, but like, do I actually show up this way? So you're in
Mm-hmm.
an interesting course of study
Mm-hmm.
uh, around relationships, which don't be surprised also if they send you a lot of characters. Like if you're getting just very interesting characters and very interesting personalities, you're like, oh, this is not vanilla in the way that I'm
Yeah.
used to. It's like, oh, this
Yeah.
is different. And that's part of it, they're saying. So it's like,
Mm. No, I feel that. I'm like, I'm dating and this is the first time I've been so objective.
yes,
Like
yes.
I'm in it and I'm like, okay. Like I'm not like, oh my God, like getting swept away. I'm like, wow, these things are really good. Like, okay, this is a really good characteristic. This is a really good quality. And I'm just like watching, not diving in. Like
Yes.
it is like that third person feeling. That's what I feel. I literally was talking about that this morning because I'm like, I feel like I've never been like this before. It's always like, oh my God, I jump all the way in where I'm like, no, I'm just let things show up how they are. I don't know. Like there's no need to be worried about it. If we're supposed to work out and like be together, we will. And if we're not, we're not. And it's just observe right now.
You're right on track. That's exactly what they
Hmm.
were showing is just like a very not and it's not detachment. It's like it's distance, but
No.
it's not detachment. It's distance
Hmm.
that you can see yourself, see other people, feel
Yeah.
yourself in reaction to other people. It's really good. It's very, very fortifying for you.
Hmm.
And being willing to go through this stage is going to bring in an entirely different partnership than you ever thought you were even capable of.
Yeah. I feel it. It's like the journey that I'm on for sure.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
I can't wait. Yeah.
No,
I
it's
know all
good.
the girls start flipping their hair, right? They're like, okay, we're talking about boys.
You know what's so funny? I didn't know this guy was telling me this. He's like, when you flip your hair and you do this stuff. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, it's like a flirty thing. I'm like, I didn't even know I do that. He's like, no, the way you flip your hair and then I can smell it. And like, I was like, oh, I didn't know that that was even a thing.
It's it's so funny. My boyfriend and I talk about this all the time. He has been
Yeah.
very good at helping me see he's the best salesperson I've ever met in my life. And so we call him like the human behavior scientist because he is like
Yeah.
impeccable at human behavior. And he's like, watch,
Hmm.
we were going for a walk yesterday and there's like these three girls passing us. And one of the girls started like flipping her hair. And he was like, see, she sees a man in her proximity and is now flipping her hair in this like unconscious way. And we watched them walk, 5 minutes after us, and she did not touch her hair again the whole time. So these little unconscious behaviors are interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. And it's like those little things where I'm like, huh, didn't even know that you do that. It's so interesting. I love it. Is there anything else you want to say? Obviously, you can say specifically to me anything that's coming through. It could be collective stuff that you're feeling, like anything that you are feeling called to share.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm asking specifically for the listeners
Hmm.
of this. And what I'm hearing is that like things feel almost like out of reach, like they're hearing conversations that don't quite make sense, or they're reading material that doesn't quite make sense, or it's like they're immersed that it's like they're a third grader, but put in fifth grade math or something. And they're like, the numbers are familiar, but the equations or operations are not familiar. And what I'm
Right.
understanding is that it's so important to remember that a lot of our learning happens on an unconscious and like a cellular level. So if you feel like my brain is not making sense of this, but I feel something shifting, or I feel called to listen to this, or I feel drawn to this person or this conversation or this resource or this place, there's something in the resonance and the coherence of that thing for your system. You can leave your brain out of it. So like
Mm.
trust your body to guide you to where you're going. It's bringing you towards what is coherent. And even if the words don't make sense, even if it's like, you've been raised non-denominational Christian, but you feel called to pick up a Quran or something like that, it's like there's something in the actual frequency, in the vibration of whatever
Mm.
you're feeling called to, that is aligned for where you are right now. And soon you will feel much less like an apprentice, or much like a, kind of confused, and more having your sea legs in whatever space you're moving to. But trust the movement first and foremost.
Mm. No, it's so true. Because I feel like we think logically, we're like, this isn't making sense, but it's like it can resonate within your body, and your body can
Yes.
get it. And even though your logical mind doesn't get it, like your soul can get it. And then it's kind of like when you listen to frequency music, or like you go to sleep and you're listening to these affirmations and you're not hearing it, but your body, like you're hearing it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're
No, I love
receiving.
that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what was coming through. It's like, I feel like your audience, of course, your podcast is called Expand and Evolve, and I feel like that's what's happening, but like more quickly and more rapidly than they even can consciously kind of keep up with. So it feels like a lot of people are kind of in this tailspin of
Mm-hmm.
running faster than my legs can carry me, but you're being held, so it's okay, it's safe, it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else for the collective, whether it's listeners or
Yeah, what else is here? Let's see. Yeah, this is really important. Energetic hygiene is so important right now for all of the reasons that we've talked about. So the same way we shower, we clean our homes, we, have some sort of hygiene routine for our physical spaces. It's so important to put a daily practice in place that supports your energetic body, your spiritual body, the same way you support your physical body. I like to think of this in 4 steps. So, cleanse, clear, charge, and protect are the 4 steps. There's a
mm,
meditation that I have created and have shared. If you feel called to it, you're welcome
yes.
to use that as a daily practice. You can find that um, on my socials or on my website, and we'll share the notes maybe in the show notes. But
Yes, please.
it is so important to get in the habit of that so that you can have that energetic sovereignty and
Mhm.
know what is yours, what is not yours. You can feel
Mhm.
your way into the spaces that are for you.
No, 1,000%. I have friends, I've been telling them too. I'm like, no, you need to clear. Like, it's like the understanding. I even notice it now when I'm with a group. Before I would just feel all these feelings. I'm like, oh, I don't know. I just feel so down. Where now I'm like, no, you took on a bunch of energy. Take a moment, whether you meditate, you clear it, sage it, Palo Santo it, whatever you need to do. Like, clear it out, and then sit with it and like reconnect and reground into yourself. Those practices have been game changer for me.
Yes, they're so important. And again, it's like if you don't know what color
Mhm.
your own water is, you're not going to be able to tell what's muddy and what's not muddy because you're coming from a place that's already distorted. So,
So true. Um, I love that so much. Any last thoughts? Anything that you're just kind of feeling like people really need to hear right now, or like anything you want to share about yourself?
yeah, what I'll share is like there's nothing I love more on this planet than
Mhm.
supporting people in their journey. So if anything that we've shared here today resonates, please feel free to reach out.
Mhm.
I'm like totally, we'll chat you up in the DMs. There's no gatekeeping here. I'm not
Yeah.
like, oh, you have to book a session to,
Yeah.
here for the people who are here for saying yes to this journey.
Mhm.
And I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Mhm.
And if I could leave us all with like one message, it is that energetic sovereignty and
Mhm.
autonomy is going to be the number one currency that we have moving forward. Being in full connection with yourself, with
Mhm.
knowing what is yours, what is not yours, with knowing what is right for you and not right for you is going to be more valuable than any dollar bill, than any gold coin. It is like the most important thing. So continue on the
Mhm.
path to creating that for yourself and with yourself.
Love. So good.
Yeah,
It's so good.
so
Okay,
good.
well, thank you so much for being here. Now I want to book a whole full session.
I can't wait. We'll do it.
I like love this stuff so much because I'm like, this is where you can know and be connected to yourself, but it's still fun to have other insight and like just information that like sometimes a different perspective. So I love it. I love what you're doing. It's like my favorite to go to sessions like that and just hear what people have to say. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing this hour with me and sharing your time with me. I appreciate it so much. Where can people find you in terms of like, is website best, Instagram best? Like what's best for people to connect with you?
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram at Angelica Ray. And you can also find me on my website, angelicaray.com. Both my website is actually undergoing some changes right now.
Mhm.
So you'll land at a landing page where you can book a session. And like I said, those sessions are meant for you to feel, hear,
Mhm.
experience your own truth. I'm not here to tell you anything, earth shattering, just here to
Yeah.
help offer guidance, wisdom, and reconnection to
Mhm.
yourself. And that's
Love
where
it.
you can find me.
Where are you located? Are you still in Atlanta?
I am. I'm in
Yeah.
Atlanta.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
But
I
I
love
do all
that.
of my sessions are virtual, so I have clients all around the
Yeah,
world, and I love connecting with people everywhere.
I love it. So fun. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for being here. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
Bye.